Have you ever felt the crushing weight of pretending to be someone you're not? That moment when you laugh at a joke that doesn't amuse you or nod in agreement while something inside you screams in opposition. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from maintaining a facade. It's not just mental fatigue, but a soul-deep weariness that follows you like a shadow. I've come to understand this feeling as the price we pay when we trade authenticity for acceptance, when we build elaborate halls of mirrors that reflect back what others want to see rather than who we truly are. The pain of this disconnection runs deep, creating a hollow space within, where our authentic self retreats further and further away from the surface. You might recognize this feeling, the sense that beneath your carefully curated expressions and measured responses lies a person you barely recognize anymore, a stranger to yourself. This disconnection from our authentic core is perhaps one of the most profound forms of suffering we experience as humans, not because it's always acutely painful, but because it's a slow diminishment of our life force, a gradual dimming of our inner light. I understand this struggle intimately, and today I want to explore a path toward reclaiming that authentic self, guided by the profound wisdom of psychologist Carl Rogers. The journey back to authenticity isn't simple or straightforward, but it is perhaps the most meaningful work we can undertake, and I believe it's accessible to each of us in ways that might surprise you. Today we'll explore what it means to remove the masks and step into the vulnerability and power of being fully ourselves, even in a world that seems to reward conformity and performance over authenticity and truth. The concept of authenticity stands at the very heart of Carl Rogers' humanistic approach to psychology. Rogers didn't just theorize about authenticity, he lived it, embodied it, and recognized it as the cornerstone of psychological well-being. But what exactly does it mean to be authentic? For Rogers, authenticity, or what he often called congruence, meant to alignment between our inner experience and our outer expression. It's when what we feel inside matches what we show to the world. It sounds simple in theory, yet in practice this alignment is one of the most challenging psychological achievements. We live in a world of expectations, roles, and social contracts that often demand we present a certain version of ourselves: the competent professional, the supportive partner, the unwavering parent. Even when our inner experience might be one of uncertainty, frustration, or inadequacy, these expectations create what Rogers called conditions of worth, the implicit message that we are worthy of love and acceptance only when we fulfill certain conditions. These conditions become internalized early in our lives, often so deeply that we mistake them for our own values and desires. The child who learns that anger leads to rejection begins to suppress and deny their anger, not just from others, but from their own awareness. The adult who was praised only for achievement may drive themselves relentlessly, unable to access their need for rest and play. The person raised in a household where vulnerability was seen as weakness may build impenetrable walls, keeping even loved ones at a distance. These adaptations aren't failures or weaknesses. They're intelligent responses to environments where showing our true selves wasn't safe or valued. They protected us when we needed protection. The tragedy isn't that we developed these masks and adaptations, but that long after they've served their purpose, they continue to separate us from ourselves and from authentic connection with others. I want to pause here for a moment and ask you to reflect on your own experience with authenticity. When in your life do you feel most disconnected from your true self? I know it can be difficult to put these deep feelings into words. Sometimes we've been disconnected for so long that we barely recognize the sensation anymore. But naming our experience is often the first step toward transformation. I'd like to invite you to share in the comments below, using the prompt, "I feel most disconnected when." Your response can be as simple or as complex as feels right to you. There's no wrong way to articulate your experience. By sharing your story, you not only take a step toward your own healing, but you create a space where others might recognize they aren't alone in their struggles. Sometimes, discovering that our deepest pain is also our most universal connection can be profoundly healing. And now, continuing our exploration of Rogers' approach to authenticity, Rogers observed something remarkable in his decades of therapeutic practice, that despite all the conditioning and adaptation, there remains within each person what he called an actualizing tendency. This is a natural drive toward growth, fulfillment, and authentic expression that never entirely disappears, no matter how buried it might become. Think of it as similar to a plant's innate drive toward sunlight. Even in the most challenging environments, a plant will bend, stretch, and transform itself in its reach toward light. Similarly, something within us continuously reaches toward authentic expression and fulfillment, even when external conditions make this difficult. This actualizing tendency is not just a psychological theory, it's a profound statement of faith in human nature and potential. In an era when many psychological approaches focused on pathology and dysfunction, Rogers dared to suggest that the core of human nature is positive, constructive, and inherently trustworthy. The implications of this view are revolutionary. If we accept Rogers' perspective, then the path to healing and growth doesn't require imposing external solutions or correcting fundamental flaws. Rather, it involves creating conditions that allow our natural tendency toward wholeness and authenticity to reassert itself. It suggests that beneath our adaptations and defenses lies not chaos or destructive impulses, but an ordered wisdom that, given the right conditions, will naturally move us toward greater authenticity and fulfillment. But if this actualizing tendency is so natural, why is authenticity so challenging? Why do so many of us struggle to connect with and express our true selves? Rogers identified 3 key conditions necessary for this natural growth process to flourish, conditions that are often missing in our formative relationships and environments. The first of these is unconditional positive regard, being valued and accepted for who we are, not for what we do or achieve. Consider how different this is from the conditional acceptance that characterizes many relationships and institutions in our society, from early education systems that reward certain types of performance while ignoring or punishing others, to family dynamics where love feels contingent on meeting expectations, to workplace cultures that value output over well-being. We are surrounded by messages that our worth is conditional. Under these conditions, we learn to hide or disown parts of ourselves that seem unacceptable, gradually losing touch with our authentic experience. The second condition Rogers identified is empathic understanding, having our subjective experience accurately seen and reflected back to us. Without this mirror, it becomes difficult to know ourselves. Imagine growing up in an environment where your feelings were consistently misinterpreted or dismissed. You're not really sad, you're just tired, or there's no reason to be afraid. Over time, this misattunement creates a profound disconnection from our own emotional reality. We begin to doubt and second-guess our experiences, creating internal confusion and fragmentation. The third condition is genuineness or congruence in our significant relationships, being in connection with others who are themselves authentic rather than hiding behind professional facades or social roles. When those around us are consistently performing rather than being real, it reinforces the message that authenticity is neither safe nor valued. The absence of these conditions in our developmental environments and current relationships creates what Rogers described as a state of incongruence, a painful split between our authentic experience and our awareness. We begin to selectively perceive and distort reality to maintain consistency with our self-concept, even when that self-concept is based on internalized conditions of worth rather than our actual experience. A person who has internalized the message, "I am someone who always puts others first," might completely fail to register their own feelings of resentment or burnout. Someone who believes, "I am independent and need no one," might reinterpret their longing for connection as weakness or neediness to be overcome. This selective perception becomes self-reinforcing, creating increasingly rigid patterns of thinking and behaving that further disconnect us from our authentic experience. The price of this disconnection is high. Rogers observed that incongruence underlies much of what we consider psychological distress, anxiety, depression, relationship difficulties, and a general sense of emptiness or meaninglessness. When we can't trust or access our own experience, we lose our internal compass. Decisions become overwhelming because we can't discern what we truly want or need. Relationships remain superficial because we present only partial versions of ourselves. Work loses its sense of purpose and meaning when it's disconnected from our authentic values. Even success can feel hollow when it's achieved in pursuit of goals that don't reflect our deeper truth. The journey back to authenticity begins with creating the conditions that Rogers identified as essential for growth. Rather than trying to fix or change ourselves, we focus on establishing an internal relationship characterized by unconditional positive regard, empathic understanding, and genuineness. This might sound abstract, but it translates into very concrete practices. Unconditional positive regard means approaching all parts of our experience with acceptance rather than judgment. When we notice self-criticism arising, "I shouldn't feel this way," or What's wrong with me for wanting that? We practice meeting these thoughts with curiosity and compassion instead. We recognize that all of our feelings and desires, even the difficult or contradictory ones, contain important information about our needs and values. Empathic understanding involves developing a curious, non-judgmental awareness of our moment-to-moment experience. This might take the form of regular reflection practices like journaling or meditation, or simply pausing throughout the day to check in with ourselves. What am I feeling right now? What do I need in this moment? Over time, this consistent attention helps us reconnect with aspects of our experience that we've learned to ignore or deny. Genuineness means allowing ourselves to acknowledge the truth of our experience, first to ourselves and then, gradually and appropriately, to others. This doesn't mean impulsively acting on every feeling or sharing every thought without discernment. Rather, it means developing the capacity to recognize and own our authentic reactions instead of automatically hiding behind socially acceptable responses or habitual roles. As we create these conditions internally, we also begin to seek them in our external relationships and environments. This often involves difficult but necessary choices about where and with whom we spend our time. Some relationships and environments are naturally more conducive to authenticity than others. Certain friendships allow for greater vulnerability and honesty, while others seem to require constant performance and self-monitoring. Some work cultures value diverse perspectives and genuine engagement, while others reward conformity and superficial agreement. Even family relationships, despite their importance, may not always support our authentic expression. The process of aligning our external world with our commitment to authenticity often involves setting clearer boundaries, having difficult conversations, seeking out new communities that share our values, and sometimes letting go of relationships or roles that consistently require us to abandon our truth. These changes rarely happen all at once. Authenticity is a practice and a process, not a destination. There will be moments of alignment and connection, followed by times when we fall back into old patterns of people-pleasing, performance, or disconnection. Rogers emphasized that growth is not linear, but spiral, revisiting similar themes at deeper levels of integration over time. One of the most challenging aspects of the journey toward authenticity is facing the grief of lost time and missed connection. As we become more authentic, we often become painfully aware of how much of our life has been spent in adaptation and performance. We may grieve the relationships that remained superficial because we couldn't bring our whole selves, the opportunities we didn't pursue because they didn't align with our internalized shoulds, the joy we didn't allow ourselves to feel because it didn't fit our self-concept. This grief is a natural and necessary part of the healing process. By acknowledging what's been lost, we create space for something new to emerge. And remarkably, as we move through this grief, we often discover an unexpected sense of liberation and aliveness. Parts of ourselves that have been dormant or hidden begin to reawaken. We find ourselves drawn to new interests, expressing surprising opinions, experiencing emotions with greater intensity and nuance. There's a sense of coming home to ourselves, of recognizing aspects of our being that have been there all along, waiting for the safety and permission to emerge. This emerging authenticity brings with it a natural wisdom and discernment. Rather than relying on external rules or others' expectations to guide our choices, we develop greater trust in our own experience. We become more capable of recognizing what nourishes us and what depletes us, what brings genuine fulfillment versus temporary distraction or validation. This internal compass doesn't eliminate life's complexities or challenges, but it provides a more reliable guide through them. Authenticity also transforms our relationships in profound ways. As we become more real with ourselves, we naturally become more real with others. The energy previously spent on maintaining facades becomes available for genuine connection. We become capable of greater intimacy because we're bringing more of our true selves to our interactions. Paradoxically, as we become less focused on managing others' perceptions of us, we often become more attuned and responsive to others' authentic needs and feelings. This creates a virtuous cycle where our authenticity creates space for others' authenticity, deepening connection and trust. However, increased authenticity doesn't always lead to harmony in relationships. In fact, as we become more authentic, some relationships may become more conflictual or uncomfortable before they improve. Long-established dynamics and unspoken contracts are disrupted when we begin showing up differently. A person who has always been the peacekeeper in their family may face resistance when they begin expressing disagreement. Someone who has built a reputation as the person who never needs help may encounter confusion or even resentment when they start acknowledging vulnerability. These growing pains are an inevitable part of authentic growth and require patience, compassion, and clear communication as we and our relationships adapt to this new way of being. The journey toward authenticity also challenges us to examine and potentially reconfigure our relationship with society's expectations and definitions of success. Many of us have internalized narratives about what constitutes a good or worthwhile life that may not align with our authentic values and needs. A successful career that leaves no room for creative expression or meaningful connection. The perfectly maintained home that requires suppressing our need for rest or spontaneity. The socially approved relationship that doesn't honor our unique needs for autonomy or intimacy. As we become more authentic, we may find ourselves questioning and reimagining these externally imposed definitions of success, creating lives that better reflect our true priorities and values. This doesn't mean rejecting all societal norms or responsibilities. Authenticity exists in dynamic relationship with our social context, not in isolation from it. Rather, it means developing a more conscious and discerning relationship with these external influences, choosing which to embrace and which to release based on their alignment with our deeper truth. Rogers observed that as people move toward greater authenticity, they tend to develop certain qualities and characteristics. They become more open to their experience, less defensive, more accepting of complexity and contradiction. They develop greater trust in their own organisms, their bodily sensations, emotional responses, and intuitive knowing. They become more creative and flexible in their approach to life's challenges, less bound by rigid beliefs about how things should be. Perhaps most significantly, they develop what Rogers called an internal locus of evaluation, looking primarily to their own experience rather than external approval or criticism to assess their choices and actions. These qualities don't emerge through willpower or deliberate cultivation, but as natural expressions of the growth process that occurs when the conditions for authenticity are present. This is why Rogers' approach focuses more on creating these conditions than on achieving specific outcomes or developing particular traits. When we provide the right environment, internally and externally, our inherent tendency toward growth and integration naturally moves us in these directions. If this message has resonated with something deep inside you, if you've recognized aspects of your own struggle in what I've shared today, I want you to know that you're not alone on this journey toward authenticity. This channel is dedicated to creating a space where we can explore these profound aspects of human experience together, guided by the wisdom of Carl Rogers and the humanistic tradition. Unlike much of the self-improvement content you might find elsewhere, we're not here to offer quick fixes or superficial techniques. Instead, we're committed to honoring the depth and complexity of your unique journey, offering perspectives and practices that respect your inherent wisdom and capacity for growth. If this approach speaks to you, I invite you to subscribe to this channel and activate notifications so you can join us for future explorations. Consider this small act as a commitment to your own growth and authenticity, a reminder that amidst all the demands and distractions of daily life, your inner journey matters. I'm here consistently, offering these reflections and creating this space for our collective exploration. Let's walk this path toward greater authenticity together, supporting each other as we each find our way back to the truth of who we are. The beauty of Rogers' vision of authenticity is that it's not an all-or-nothing proposition. We don't need to completely transform our lives or achieve some perfect state of congruence to begin experiencing its benefits. Even small movements toward greater authenticity, a moment of honest self-reflection, a single authentic exchange with a trusted friend, a tiny choice that honors our true needs, create ripples of positive change in our experience. Each authentic moment strengthens our connection to ourselves and builds our capacity for the next authentic choice. This incremental approach makes authenticity accessible even amid the constraints and complexities of our everyday lives. We don't need perfect conditions or extraordinary courage to begin this journey, just a willingness to turn toward our experience with a little more curiosity and a little less judgment than before. The process unfolds naturally from there, each authentic moment creating more internal safety for the next layer of truth to emerge. In this way, authenticity becomes not just a distant ideal, but a practical, moment-to-moment practice that gradually transforms our relationship with ourselves, others, and the world around us. Rogers' approach to authenticity also offers a unique perspective on the universal human longing for meaning and purpose. Rather than seeing meaning as something we must search for outside ourselves or create through extraordinary achievement, he suggested that meaning emerges naturally when we are in contact with our authentic experience and acting in alignment with it. The question, "What is the meaning of life?" becomes less abstract and philosophical, more immediate and personal. What feels meaningful to me in this moment? What actions align with my deepest values right now? This doesn't diminish the profundity of the human search for meaning, but grounds it in lived experience rather than abstract contemplation. It suggests that meaning isn't something we find once and for all, but something we create and discover continuously through authentic living. This perspective offers both freedom and responsibility. We are not bound by external definitions of what should be meaningful, but we are called to the ongoing work of discerning and acting from our authentic values and purposes. In a world that often seems to prioritize superficial metrics of success over deeper fulfillment, this approach to meaning-making through authenticity offers a radical alternative, one that honors the uniqueness of each person's journey while recognizing our shared human capacity for growth and meaningful connection.